The following is a fan-based review. All materials discussed are property of Toei Inc., Bandai, and Saban Entertainment.
Hello, everybody! Welcome back to another episode of Tokutalk. It's been a while.
It has been a while.
I enjoy this show, though, because it just gives us a chance to just talk about things in Tokusatsu. This week, we're going to go ahead and dive into something that's been a little bit of, a problem for about the past years, actually. Sentai ratings. And what's really contributing to the fact that they are going down something fierce. Zyuohger, number 40 in the Sentai scale, is the 40th rated Sentai. 40th.
Out of 40.
Out of 40. What is happening? I feel like there are a lot of things that actually contributing to this, though. They don't count digital sales or like digital
Streaming.
Of the actual shows, which is really strange. You would think Japan would have counted that a long time ago. Apparently not. And the other thing is, and this is I was speaking about this in a Q&A video, serialization really helps shows. Like, a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like Sentai and Kamen Rider has been trying to wean back on this, and they're really doing it with XA, considering the fact that it only has one writer, or main writer, and he's keeping the story as just a main story throughout the entire thing. So it's really serialized. There isn't a lot of filler. But in a lot of these shows, there is quite a bit of filler. And that's problematic. You don't really end up wanting to watch a show and just like, this has nothing to do with the plot whatsoever.
And Kamen Rider was really bad about this a few years back until Gaim hit.
Yeah.
Wizard, Forze, O's, W's,
and W, yeah.
the first bit of Drive, Ghost.
Oh boy.
And it's just like, when you end up having a lot of filler, it's just like, why do I end up coming back to this show?
Why bother watching it if it's just going to be...
If it's just going to be Monster of the Week after Monster of the Week.
And that's terrible. Because, I mean, like, you end up drawing people back if you end up having a conversation.
Especially with Wizard when everything was a two-parter.
Yeah. And that's a part of Den-O just being terrible in general. Because that really ends up starting with Den-O. Like, Kabuto did it as well, but it's hidden a lot better in Kabuto.
Yeah. Because
there wasn't, like, an actual victim. It was just a monster that they had to beat. In some cases, I mean, like, there was a victim, like, Deca Pink was in that one episode, and she got taken over, or rather, she got copied. And, but it's hidden a lot better in Kabuto. And, Hibiki had that, one continuous story of this kid growing. Up to episode 30. And then we got to Den-O, and it's just like, the story really took a back seat, because I remember the story in Den-O didn't even really end up becoming a thing. Like, they did it every once in a while in that show, like the story being an actual thing.
Yeah.
And then it didn't happen again until almost the very end of the show. And that's why I really don't end up liking Den-O that much. It's like, yeah, it's hilarious, don't get me wrong. But I got bored, because I'm just like, where is the story in this? What's the purpose of fighting all these Imagines? I sort of don't understand. Kiba sort of did this in some cases. That whole love story thing comes to mind. That's how
going back and forth between two time periods was kind of confusing.
That part was fine, but
I
think I mentioned this.
To me, it was kind of off-putting, because
I think I mentioned this in the top 10
follow.
secondary writers top 10 episode that we did.
Yeah.
The fact that the father was just so much more charismatic.
Yeah, he was.
And it's just like, he was the whole reason I stuck with that show. Decade, I mean...
But I can understand that somehow it would be off-putting if you're constantly going back and forth between time periods.
Yeah.
And with something like, W and O's, there was a lot of filler in that too until about the halfway point. We'll say the same thing about Drive. Gaim was basically just one continuous story. I mean, they had that show more had arcs.
Yes.
Where it's just like, you had the dancing arc, and then you had the Overlord arc, and then you had the final arc with Kaito.
And the thing of, like...
And they were all good.
They were all good arcs, even the dancing arc, to a degree. But
I liked it.
It was the thing about Gaim was very anime-esque in that sense, where it was just one small story within this bigger story that's kind of this general thing that's going on. Which is, I think, one of the reasons why I love Gaim so much.
But I feel like, in Sentai, the fact that, yes, we get it. It's meant for, sort of younger kids. as opposed to Kamen Rider.
Mm-hmm.
But when you end up having something like the whole arc with that other villain in Zyuohger was fine, Bunglei. Like, that was fine, but it's just like there was also a lot of filler in there. Like, I felt like the Bunglei thing lasted way too long. Like, he should have just died.
It's the only thing we got. Let's keep running with
it. And then,
well, it didn't help that the villains in Zyuohger weren't that interesting.
Genos didn't really do much. They didn't end up really doing anything with the other ones.
Don't even get me started on that last episode.
Maria.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even know what her point was.
Dying.
Gokaiger's villains were just there.
Gokaiger's villains were just there because Gokaiger... The villains were not the point of that show.
Yeah.
The Gokaigers were the point of that show.
Sort of like
but you also had Bosco.
Yeah.
True.
Gokaiger was a very special case just because of the mass that the season was.
Mm-hmm.
But their ratings on here, they're 33rd, and the problem with that, and this is a lot of people.
Wow, their ratings are lower than Goseiger,
and that's what I was just about to tie into, because Goseiger's ratings weren't that high, but a lot of people fell off of that show because those characters were just not that interesting.
Not to mention, like, the middle arc, just like Gaim, Goseiger was very arc. There was 3 different villains that they faced. The middle ones were boring as hell.
Mm-hmm.
It was all
pollution arc.
All about pollution and blah blah blah. Oh my god, we don't care. We skipped it.
We skipped into the last episode. It's bad, but it's just like that show really ended up reflecting badly on Gokaiger because a lot of people who were watching Sentai didn't come back, even though this was supposed to be a gigantic anniversary series, which it was. But it's just it missed so much because of Goseiger sort of ruining those ratings. And I'm looking at it here. Boukenger was the point where everything really started to go downhill. Because as you see after a little bit, it's just like there's just been a constant slump. Straight down. Like Boukenger's at 6.7, Kyuranger's at 5.1, Kyuranger's at 5.0. Went back up to Shinkenger to 5.9. And then it's just been going lower and lower and lower ever since. And I feel like it's missed. That's why I really like the ones from like the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s a lot more in some cases because those fillers weren't really as existent.
Mm-hmm.
Or in a case like Lion Man, I mean, they did have fillers, but there was still a lot of characterization and building up characters. And
it's like there's nothing that really pushes the main story here forward, but let's delve into our characters a little bit more.
Yeah. And I think that's something that a lot of, especially in Zyuohger, and we'll talk about Ninja in a second, because the way their story is set up is just a bag of fuckery. But Zyuohger, they focus a lot on Red and a lot on the world, and everybody else has really already had a character, but they only ended up showing like one facet of a character. Everyone's
very one-dimensional in these shows.
Like we get it. Tusk is boring. Like, literally boring. I don't remember anything about his character, but I remember something about Amu, because she was the one who was a lot more conniving and sneaky and things like that. I liked her character a lot more. And you really got a lot, like, out of all the zoom-in, her.
Yeah.
Like, she was the one that I really ended up remembering. It was like, Leo, he was just loud. He had hilarious moments, but, I mean, he's one-trick pony. And Sela was just there. That's sad. Like, literally sad.
Mm.
Like, I remember, everybody ends up missing their family, and you get some of that from her, but it's just like, okay, and then we don't really end up getting any resolution until the very end of that episode.
The very end of that show was just generic, boring, everything's wrapped up in a nice pretty bow, no issues, we beat the final villain with Deus Ex Machina bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the problem with Zyuohger is the fact that they sped through that ending. If that show had, I think it ended on 48, 49 episodes.
Or something like that, yeah.
It needed at least another 2.
Kyuranger definitely had a similar problem.
Yeah.
Kyuranger definitely had a similar problem. I love Kyuranger to death, but God, I know that ending was awful.
It's just like, the Kyuranger only was just red. That was it. The Zyuohger ending was everybody, but once again, it felt very, very red heavy. And they did the same thing.
Because they allowed him to access all of his special abilities at once.
They did the same thing in Tokucast, where they gave him Tokyo Rainbow at the very end.
Yeah.
Where he got everybody's color. And I'm just like, okay, and this is a team again? No? Oh, okay.
Nope. It's a Kamen
It's just like, looking at these ratings is sort of depressing. Like, yeah, once again, as we said, they don't count the digital streaming, but I feel like a lot of the fact that it kept just going down and down and down and down and down is because there's filler.
We also got to remember that with filler, but the thing is that when it comes to shows like Super Sentai,
we know the show's been on for a long time. You got to go on a whole year.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about that ratings is not the main goal of the show.
It's the toy sales.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. But even still, Go Busters didn't sell well. Kyuranger did. I think Tokucast did fine. And Ninja, I don't think did that well. I know Zyuohger didn't do well.
Gee, I wonder why.
Really, really overhauling.
If you're gonna make your show and your characters boring as shit, make the toys good. Make the aesthetic better than blocks. I'm sorry, I hated Zyuohger Zords.
Yeah, they're not the worst, but
they're not the worst. They got better as a show went on. Like when Whales Zord got introduced and they all combined, it got better. But oh my god.
It's just
Rubik's Cubes.
It is
Animals and Rubik's Cubes. How is that a good... It's like they tried to do the origami thing from Boukenger again, but nowhere near as good.
Yeah. It's like... Okay, let's just take an example on here. So, Mega Ranger had a 6.5 ratings, and Gingaman had 7.8. That's...
Shocking?
Yeah. We didn't really like that show. But
I have to ask, what is the highest rated Sentai?
The first one.
Why am I not surprised? 16.09.
To be fair, there wasn't nearly as much on TV back then.
Fair enough, it was the 70s.
But yeah, it's just like looking at these things, you see exactly how as the shows
What's the highest rated modern one?
Highest rated modern one?
That depends on what your definition of modern
Hey
is.
Sarah.
So Time Ranger on. Gao Ranger, really?
Yeah.
Wow, that show was also boring as hell.
Yeah, it wasn't really the best. But
though it did also have the benefit of killing off half its team in an episode.
And Magic Ranger did surprisingly well too.
Magic Ranger was okay though.
Yeah.
That's nice.
It's just like you gotta do a little bit better. Like we get it. It's a toy based selling show.
It's a toy based selling show, and also there's so much more that they have to compete with now.
Yeah.
Toku clones, other shows that
a lot of anime.
A lot of anime.
A lot of fucking anime.
A lot of anime.
Who can do a lot more than what they can and do it better. Which is unfortunate because they're not in the realm of reality.
Yeah, but it's just like some of these things, I feel like if they did what Gaim did, because Gaim did pretty well on his toy sales, Drive didn't. But Gaim did, and in fact, they kept that story going, but they made the actual introduction of the toys themselves feel organic to the show. Mm-hmm. And I feel like...
Not like with fucking Power Rangers and Sentai.
It's kind of funny, though, because they're...
Buy me! Buy! Just the phrase buy me just appears on the screen when something's introduced in those.
Like, do what you did more in Boukenger, where, the actual...
They had to earn it.
They really had to earn a lot of their things, and they had to work with the evolving technology. Like when I think it was Godoshu, when they got like their muskets, that's when they had to get the Taurus thing because they had to work with technology and be Nobunaga-esque, because him and the rifle and everything, that's historical. Mm-hmm. That's really a lot of the reason why Boukenger did so well, because it's Japanese as hell, and it's also just a really well written,
That's why Samurai did so terrible.
That's why it failed so much over here.
Yeah, but it's just like
they should have just skipped it.
The main point of this Tokutalk is, as you said, I'm not really angry. I'm just a little sad in the way that this is.
I'm just disappointed.
Yeah, I'm a little bit disappointed in the way that it's just going down, because as the story writing takes such a backseat to these toys, it's just like these shows end up becoming much more of a chore to watch, because you got to go through and basically pick and choose which episodes to watch. Especially because, as we do reviews on a bi-weekly basis, and having watched the Sentai and the Rider back to back, we get to see exactly this show,
the evolution of these shows.
Yeah, the evolution of that, and we'll be starting a new show soon. Every 10 years or so, 10 years in Showtime, Wizard. But every 10 years we'll be doing like a decade in review, where we just go back and talk about how this decade. How this decade ended up changing, from 5-man...
Yeah, where it started to where it ended.
Yeah, 5-man to Go-Go 5, and Time Ranger to Shinkenger or Ghost Ranger, whichever one. We won't end up talking about 5-man that much because it's bad.
We also haven't watched it.
But it's also bad.
We also haven't watched it.
And, we'll be doing it for Kamen Rider as well. But it's just, it's really, really interesting to see how everything ended up changing.
The evolution of these shows. And you can see where... I feel like these shows both started off as superhero shows for kids to watch on Saturday or Sunday morning. Mm-hmm. But as they went on,
or in the evening, because it was after Mega Ranger, where it used to be on like Friday nights, they moved it to Sunday morning.
Fair enough. But as they went on in their lives, Kamen Rider, which I believe is older, right?
By 5 years, but they had that gigantic break.
Yeah, I'm just talking about in terms of airing. Kamen Rider kind of realized that the people who've been watching Kamen Rider are getting older and who still like it but still want to watch it, but they don't want to watch a kid's show. So they kind of aged with it, making stuff a little more darker, depending on the season.
Yeah, to a degree. Deno happened.
But then, Deno had to be...
The Neo Heisei era happened.
I mean, you also got to remember, yes, you got to be darker, but not everything can be pitch black.
Yeah.
But while they're doing that, because I feel like Kamen Rider is a show centered more towards maybe preteens. And
yeah.
Especially with the way, like, X-Aid's going.
Mm-hmm.
But Sentai just seems to be going for, like, 8-year-olds, no matter what the season.
No, they're going for young.
Yeah. I mean, 8 at max.
Yeah.
Which I think is the problem.
They haven't...
8-year-olds don't give a shit about characters and story. They just want the toys. But people who are watching Kamen Rider who are a little older, they'll get bored, and the people who are writing these shows, that's why they got fucking Urobuchi to write Gaim. Mm-hmm. One of the biggest anime writers ever. Who wrote hit after hit. They needed that skill, that what he knows, what the people want.
And XA feels like a really good follow up to Gaim. The latter half of Drive feels like a really good follow up to Gaim. Ghost, no.
And I was going to go off on what he said and say that's one of the things they could do to improve the situation is go after the talent like Urobuchi and go and get like those really strong anime writers or toku writers who are good at writing strong stories.
Especially when they're people who are writing strong stories and have 12 episodes to do it. I feel like when Urobuchi was extended, I'm not speaking on behalf of Urobuchi, but when he's extended the offer to write a show that's going to span a 50-episode series.
And he was a really big fan of Ryuki.
And he was a really big fan of Ryuki.
And that shows in the
Not to mention, and then he was given, because the motif and the toy designs were already done by the time he was given the project. So he was given something that was like, oh, great, I have to make fruit scary.
Around, like he has to write around the toy.
Mm-hmm.
Which is another problem. Don't write around the toy.
Make the toy go around
the story.
Writing. So have the story first. And then come with it.
That's what
that's one of the things I think Gaim did so well.
And
because you didn't expect it to be written around the toy so well.
I think that's the way that they're doing with Kyuranger, because they're changing the formula up very much in this show.
Yeah.
So they're doing a complete overhaul of basically the Sentai formula. Like usually after
sure?
after an anniversary
give or
season,
take a few things.
Yeah, give or take a few things.
Lucky.
But like after the anniversary season, they'll do like a 3-Ranger team or something like that, because they did it with
and this one they're like
Hurricaneer. They did it with Geki Ranger. They did it with Go Busters.
But now they're just making it rain Rangers.
Yeah, it's just like, hey,
9.
You want 13? Here you go.
Want 13 Rangers? You can have all the Rangers.
You want orange? Sure. You want cyan? Sure.
But I think they're trying
gold and silver.
To
why
just make it so it's not nearly as formulaic this time. And I think the one thing
so
they really
far,
need,
I think they're doing a good job at that. Because everybody's characters are just so out there.
After the first episode, they toned Lucky down so much, and thank God. Because he's fine now.
In comparison.
In comparison.
But now that we have Gold and Silver, who kind of also bring the lightheartedness to the group, so he can kind of tone it back a bit. You've got Black and Blue, who bring the serious tone of the show to a degree.
You got Orange.
You got Pink, who really wants to take this serious, and you got Orange, who right now is kind of the black sheep.
And you have Green and Yellow, who are sort of there, but I can think that we'll end up getting to see more and more.
Because they were the first ones, so
yeah.
I'm really glad, because I hate to make this comparison. I'm getting a little bit of a One Piece feel from this, is that introducing these characters, the leader who wants to take on their burdens with them and be friends and all of that, and then they join to become this crew.
Yeah.
I only make that comparison because I saw immediately was Sparata and fuck the chef from One Piece, I forgot his name. Sanji.
Yeah.
So, and it just feels like that to me, and I love One Piece to death.
So yeah, it's just like...
And Luffy's just as obnoxious.
The point of this Tokutalk is basically just to bring a light to, these ratings and how the show is really going and what we really want to change in this show. Because we're tired
of Super Sentai being a kiddie show.
That's the thing, like, we're
We're
not
crusty old adults. We want change.
Yeah, we don't really end up knowing that much about Ultraman, but we like Nexus because
Nexus
of the
was
serial
so
nature
good.
of that show. And apparently didn't do well, but that's because they really screwed up on that time slot. I mean, come on, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like the thing that really has to change about Sentai, and we're not really complaining, we're just noting this as an observation. The thing that really ends up having to change about Sentai is the fact that we need those serialized stories of like Change Man and Jetman and Live Man back. That's one
right
thing.
now, I'm slightly worried about Kyuranger because the serialized story so far has been finding the other Kyurangers,
which is fine for the
which is
first part
fine.
of the show.
But now that we found the 9.
Where are we going to go from here? And the big thing, and the fact that they're on Earth now is a big problem. We'll talk about
they
that.
went to Earth. I haven't watched the newest episode.
We'll
yet.
talk about that later when we actually get to the review about how they just. It feels like they went there too early, but yeah, it's just like some things do end up having to change. We're really hoping that from what we've seen in Kyuranger so far, we like it, but we're a little bit worried about now that we're on Earth. How long are we going to end up being here? That's the one thing.
Because I love them going from planet to planet.
They made this an intergalactic threat, and here we are already. So
it's 5 episodes, not even that.
But yeah,
we just had to talk about that for a minute because we liked Zyuohger at first, and it's now the lowest rated show in Sentai, or the lowest rated Sentai in history. And it's kind of heartbreaking to see a show that we love so much, a series that we love so much, be on this such dramatic decline because it's all about toy sales. And I'm sorry, Power Rangers does the same thing. It does. And it's even worse because they have to write around the Sentai footage.
Yep. In some cases, they just take it and make it their own. Look at you. Go on during RPM.
And look what happens when you make it your own. Look what happens. Because once again, have you noticed that the best Power Rangers are always the ones that they say it's going to be the last one? In space, RPM. And they're like, this is your last hurrah. Here's a little bit bigger of a budget. Go nuts.
And then they get screwed.
And then they get screwed with the Sentai footage.
What comes after. But yeah.
Well, that didn't give us a dino charging. It just gives us a genuinely good show.
Up until Super Dino Charge, which happened. But yeah, that's the
Super Dino Charge did kind of go downhill.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the end of this Tokutalk episode. I like doing these. I feel like these episodes are just something more to just. These are more observational shows. For Tokutalk.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing.
Not everything has to be an angry rant.
Or a review.
Not everything has to be a review.
Or a top 10.
Not everything has to be a rant, even though our viewers kind of just enjoy watching you bitch out.
They're watching you lose your mind.
Thank you.
Which is why we have 2 ready to...
Got a couple in the bag.
Yep.
Good times.
Good times, anyway.
But that
about wraps it up.
Yeah.
If you got a topic that you want us to talk about...
put it in the comments. Send it to us on Twitter. We're at the Tokucast. Please.
Put it on our Facebook page.
Yeah, put it on our Facebook page. Just follow us, like us, subscribe. We'll see you guys next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.